You summoned the presence of your advisor, Lord Sauron of Mordor, indisputable ruler of Middle-earth?
Saruman the Black appeared before his liege at the throne room of Barad-dûr, as commanded. He had long been dispossessed of his white Ainur robes and staff, being now clad in the darkness of a Morgul cloak, bearing the red eye that so pleased the commander of his soul, and wielding presently a foul weapon of wizardry, hewn from a bone of what must have been a very tall and robust creature that culminated in an ever-grinning humanoid skull. Soon after the victory of the alliance of the two towers of Barad-dûr and Orthanc, of Mordor and Isengard, over all the western races, Saruman realized that power could never be shared with Sauron, nor could he hope to take it from him now that he had achieved his long-desired victory. A victory that swept the remainder of the men and elves and Maiar and even the pesky hobbits that dared to stand against the inevitable dark tide. That was so long ago. The age of the orc had come. Saruman had lost none of his guile and cunning, and so he willingly yielded his share of the power to Sauron, that so granted him privilege, appointing him his chief counselor and necromancer. Strict obedience that he maintained with the greatest cunning also allowed him to keep his own mind outside the Dark Lord's direct influence and voice in it, proven has he that his mind in its purer state is of far more service to the lidless eye. In this fashion, he was able to still enjoy, as much as being the last of his kind made it so possible, the pleasures akin to his unorcish condition, dividing his time between Isengard, where he was allowed to keep a small private and secret garden of his own, the last in Middle-earth, and Minas Morgul, or Barad-dûr, according to his master's summons, as was the case now.
A riddle presents itself before us, Saruman. It comes at a time when my victory is supreme and for the ages of eternity. Now that my eye covers the entirety of this world, I deem that you, having descended from Maiar, are best equipped to discern it.
The one ring glowed with profane fire in his finger of the left hand. His right hand would never be allowed to have again the count of 5, for what was willfully cut by Narsil could never again manifest whole. Narsil was the lost sword only wieldable by the long-dead kings of Númenor, that last appeared reforged as Andúril in that feeble attempt at resistance by that Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and his pathetic band years ago. Bowing his head, Saruman the Black answered,
How may I best serve the Lord of the Ring of Power, the almighty Sauron?
Without further words, Sauron pointed with his left hand towards the body of a dead orc, lying under the pedestal where the 3 found Palantir, the seeing stones, were set. Saruman saw this and, puzzled, glanced back at Sauron questioningly. The one-eyed master said nothing more, and merely lay again his left hand upon the arm of his throne. The necromancer then approached, slowly, as if half expecting a trap, trying to conjure in his memory any possible transgression he might have had against his master that could produce in his grim soul the desire for a cruel retribution he might now be baited for. As he approached, he saw that the seeing stones were quiet. Moving his eyes downward towards the dead orc body, he was perplexed. He touched the skin slightly to measure the rigidity and temperature. He had been dead for some time, preserved only by one of Sauron's spells so as to not decay before examination. However, what had caught his eye was the orc's own lifeless eyes, ajar as they were, that shone strangely, first for an orc, and then for dead at that. He lifted the lids with his two foremost fingers on his right hand and peered deeply into them. Unlike the usual dark and enveloping pupil, these globes looked more elf-like somehow. Saruman glanced inquisitively at Sauron, who still sat motionless. Guessing the wish of his master, Saruman arose from the body and now addressed the three Palantir seeing stones. He focused. In his mind, the strange eyes of that orc were centered as he gazed into the centermost of the three spherical stones. On its smooth surface, the clouds and shapes began to move as revelation of the past was making way. Shahrukh was gathered with a group of orcs in a very strange congregation for this foul kind. Wearing robes sewn together from ragged clothes and discarded flags instead of their customary beast hide and leather, or metal ringmail for the strongest among them, they sat quietly in a tall cave around a small fire.
What you speak, Shahrukh, calms soul, quiets his voice.
One of the orcs said.
It is not of what I speak, Huruk-Push, but what yet lingers in your soul, indestructible, even though ages of pressure have passed over it.
Sharukh's voice and speech were incredibly smooth and refined, never before found in his kind.
Most orc kind was, long ago, elf kind that came from the undying lands beyond the vast oceans in the west. Having been tempted into doubt and transgression, they fell into the grasp of the evil ones, who tormented them beyond all recognition. The faces you see here were, ages ago, fair and merry and full of life. Evil ones torture, evil ones we kill,
Uruk-Burs replied, more in line with the anger natural in his orcishness.
It is of no use to raise a rebellion, my friends, for even if we had the power to win by arms and sorcery, it would reawake in us that which we strove so much over these years to subdue, which is the power evil holds over us, this rage, this eternal vindictive need. Understand that what we eternally seek vengeance for can never be avenged by the rage that causes it to be. Evil is evil, whether it was enacted ages ago or at this very moment. Whether it is the destruction of fair nations to replace them with necromancers, or the sacking of travelers on the road for lust and greed, or even a mere lie told to a friend to poison his mind. Evil is also a carnage in the name of vengeance against any such deeds, especially for us, orcs, whose nature has already been so castigated by death and vileness and darkness, that we, above all others who are redeemable, for know this, my friends, many are not, we are more prone to falling again into evil by that shortest route of avenging that which was done upon us, and the shame of having so allowed it, high as we were in our heyday. How? We must continue to strive, away from the eye's glare and his commanding voice, to reawaken the elvish nature within us. We are elves, all of us here, and many of them out there who are still asleep in evil deeds and wishes. Yet many will never see it, and it is so, because narrow is the path at the center of a darkened orcish heart.
Closing his eyes, Shahrukh, the orcish prophet, spoke a poem to the assembly.
I remember a time when the voice wasn't. I remember the silence, my peaceful darkness, crying, laughing, colors and dancing, holding, hunting, dreaming and loving, silence and darkness. A narrow of light broke my silence. Oh, how precious the shining, the first whisper that ended my darkness. How shining, my precious, smiling, staring, wanting and reaching, dreaming, lusting, whisper and light. Like having the sun in my mind was his eye, blinding my soul. Whispering rays, raging, sadness, running and madness, killing, hunting, nightmare and hating, whispers and light. I want to go back to my silence and darkness, where no whispers are shining, and his voice wasn't.
Shahrukh opens his eyes, and they are radiant like the eyes of elves. In the cave are his elvish companions and friends of old that fell with him ages ago. They opened their arms, embraced him, and offered timeless peace and life to that peculiar orc that found an impossible path out of the enemy's ultimate victory. He falls, lifeless in body, yet life-full in spirit, and soul cleansed and purified.